For centuries, Alderaan stood as a beacon of hope in the Republic. But the Empire came.
Where did the motivation to come to making a fully sort of written and, voiced, really story-deep MMO come from? Because it's quite a different thing.
We've actually wanted to do an MMO for years and years, all the way back predating Neverwinter Nights, which obviously was the first foray into doing online multiplayer. Really, it's been about having both the know-how and the tech to be able to bring all of it to. One of the things when we first really started looking at MMOs, we had something clearly in our mind of what we thought they were going to look like, right? We thought we'd go in there and there'd be great stories, and there would be it would be a role-playing game that you could play with your friends. Of course, in the early days, the resources were such that you really couldn't get that. So it was a matter of waiting until we had both a project that was going to allow us to come in and do it with a bang, but also the know-how to say, all right, how can we bring all of what an RPG means into an MMO space? And that's a lot of work.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of work. I've heard that you can play this game as a loner. You can run right through each class essentially and have a different story by yourself. How was it in terms of writing it for a group experience?
One of the things that, so just sort of on the subject of the group experience, one of the things that we really haven't seen too much of is you guys have mainly been looking at the Origin Worlds at this point. And the Origin Worlds are definitely heavier on the class-specific content. We really were getting you into the world, we're teaching you who you are, we're teaching you about your role, and while the class stories take you all the way from the beginning to the end, and while it is absolutely possible to play through single player if that's what you want to do, we very quickly start to move you towards the multiplayer content, including what we call world arcs, which are really where the meat of the Republic versus the Empire story takes place. And these are giant, double-digit hours long quest chains with intricacies and choices you guys make, and you do all of that stuff together.
And so that stuff just spreads out once you get, is it past the end, or is that sort of halfway through the game, or is that those larger sort of quests? So what I'm really trying to get at is what happens after the end of your character arc. I mean, do you end up just raiding, or is there...
We, of course, have not actually talked about Elder Game content stuff. Obviously, there is a time where the stuff that's been written, we actually have several ends, as it were. We've divided the game into chapters. Stories have to have arcs. They have to end, or they are not stories. They are just stuff that happens. So there are several endings to it. The Elder Game stuff, one of the things that's really important for us is that we don't talk about much until we've actually really nailed it. And your Elder Game content should come fairly organically from what is fun in your game. And while you're in the midst of development, you actually don't know this until further into the project. You don't want to plan how you're going to do your raids or plan how your PvP is going to be work based on concepts that turn out to not be true. So first you get everything down, you see what your combat feels like, you get your classes balanced, you work all of that out, you see what is fun about fighting in the game, what is fun about adventuring in the game, and then you adjust your Elder content to your strengths.
A lot of people have seen the trailers that have come out for it, and they've seen that the awesome battle. The Jedi comes in and starts nailing on the Sith guy. How have you, in terms of the game, not so much the writing, how is the balance going to work for the other classes, sort of the smuggler, etc.? How are they going to stack up power-wise to the Jedis?
Well, one of the things when we first started looking at the Star Wars fantasies for all the different classes is we actually see bounty hunters sent after Jedi on purpose, right? You need Luke, you go send Boba Fett. We saw Jango Fett fight a Jedi completely to a standstill. We saw a whole bunch of troopers take out a whole bunch of Jedi. One of the things that's really important is that you're not playing any old bounty hunter. You're not playing any old bounty trooper. You are playing the best of the best. You are in Havoc Squad, you're in Special Forces, you are the guy who won the giant contest, the bounty hunter, and you're going to go after him in a certain way, right? The bounty hunter is very much a gadgeteer. You've seen some of the stuff already that he's got, like the rope that shoots out and grabs people. He's got the giant punch that knocks people backwards and uses his jetpack. He can fly up in the air and get away from people and say like, hey, what are you doing down there, Jedi? Same thing, we've got the cover classes that are going to sneak in, crowd control from the trooper. Like, it really is about saying you need to know how you're going to attack somebody. Obviously, if a Sith warrior charges in at you, and you decide to stand toe-to-toe with them with your trooper, you are going to have some serious issues.
Yeah, you're basically going to be turned into toast. Now, World of Warcraft, I hate to bring it up, World of Warcraft in here, but it hasn't grown really that much in terms of a player base in the last couple of years. What kind of player base are you expecting for the Old Republic? Sort of what are you aiming at as a stable level, and has that influenced the development in terms of story and things like that?
One of the things that's really nice from the development team side is that's not anything we ever have to worry about. I'm sure somebody out there has numbers that they're thinking, okay, this is where we want to be. For us, we really just sat down and said, if we were going to make a massively multiplayer role-playing game, what would that look like? What would be the features that would need to be in there? What would we need to sell Star Wars? What are the dreams that say, hey, this is really a Star Wars piece? You guys got to see the ships today that we announced, and it was the same thing. When we first started doing the ships, we thought, okay, everyone will get a ship and we'll do a basic ship, because people wouldn't guess this, but ships are incredibly complex and hard to do because of all the scripting that takes place on them. The Ebon Hawk was actually the hardest part in Knights of the Old Republic. So originally we were going to do them all sort of interchangeable, so it would be really easy to do, well, not easy, but only as hard as things we knew. We got them in there, we realized it didn't hit the class fantasies. Bounty hunters wanted a very bounty hunter ship. The troopers wanted something that felt military, right? You saw the Jedi ship today has a meditation chamber in it. The Sith ship is a completely different feel. So we always go back to that. Instead of looking like how many people do we need to bring in or what is the thing, we sort of say, all right, we know what the target is, which is that we're going to do like a BioWare style role-playing game where a whole bunch of people can play with their friends and play together that absolutely hits cinematic Star Wars. That's the bar. How do we get there?
From the early glimpses, it looks like you are getting there. It seems to be a really impressive looking game. BioWare being a hardcore RPG company, how kind of in depth are the rolling the classes going to be?
So we haven't talked a lot about character creation so far. One of the things that I will say, as you've probably noticed in all of our games, it is possible to get fairly deep with it, and it's possible to not get as deep with it. We always want to make it accessible to somebody who's going to come in and jump sort of in there. In the same time, we always want to make sure that over time, if you're really starting to think about your character and really starting to develop it, you've got paths to do that. But yeah, you've noticed today that you got to play the game from the beginning, except you didn't get to see character creation. Because again, it's one of those things that we tend to fiddle with a lot.
Oh, excellent. Okay, well, probably just one last question. Us being from the Southern Hemisphere, people will be wondering, when Neverwinter Nights went online, there was a server in Australia. I don't know if this is anywhere near your area, but have you heard that there will be a South Pacific server for playing this game on?
Unfortunately, so far I've heard nothing about server space. The writers may end up naming the servers, but that's probably as much as we'll have to do with that decision.
All right, thanks a lot. Thanks, Daniel.
Absolutely.
Cheers.